Hey everyone, welcome back to TechByte. Today we're taking a look at the Canon 200D or SL2 depending on where you live. Now this is arguably the best cheap to mid-range price camera you can get for YouTube, coming in at $499 without a lens and $699 with the standard kit lens, which is 18 to 55 millimeters. So the way this review is going to work is I'm going to focus exclusively on the video aspect of this camera, as that's probably what most people are interested in if they're getting it for YouTube. So to start things off, we'll cut to a handheld vlogging scenario, then we'll cut to a sitting down in front of the camera talking scenario, and then at the end we'll go back to vlog style and in low light to see how the camera performs in that situation. Now just one more thing before we cut. During the handheld scenarios, we're going to be using the onboard microphones to give you an idea of what those sound like, and maybe, but just maybe, because I don't actually have a microphone for this camera. Maybe. Alright, so this is scenario number one, the daylight vlogging. The sun is behind me right now, so it'll be interesting to see how that looks and if the camera can expose my face correctly. Also, I'm using the onboard microphone so you can kind of get a feel of what that sounds like. The only complaint I have if you're using the 18 to 55 millimeter lens for vlogging is that I'm holding it about as far as I can right now, and as you can see, my face fills up almost the entire screen. So that means that if you do decide to use this camera for vlogging, you should probably consider getting a tripod to extend your reach a little bit, or getting a different lens which will have a wider field of view. Alright, up next for the sitting in front of the camera scenario. That's actually what we've been doing this whole time, so you can kind of judge for yourself what you think of this quality. So one thing we can't test out here are the focusing capabilities of the camera. I currently have it set to both facial tracking and autofocus, which means that if it autofocuses on, say, my hand, as soon as it sees a face in the background, it'll focus on that. So basically, in other words, if you have facial tracking enabled, faces will be the most important thing for the camera to keep in focus. Alright, so this is the night vlogging test. Looking at the screen here, I don't think it looks too bad. I don't see a lot of noise. We do have a little bit of lighting here. We have this building that's lit up. But other than that, there really isn't that much here apart from these trees. So, I don't know. I think it looks pretty good. Alright, and I gotta head home now because it is starting to rain. And this camera is not weatherproof. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. If you're gonna be out and about and it starts to rain, put the camera away. Alright, so that wraps up the three main scenarios in which I can see this camera being used if you plan on using it for video. That is vlogging, vlogging when it's dark, and shooting on a set where you're sitting down in front of the camera. Alright, but now to talk about all the things that I like and dislike about this camera, of which there are actually quite a few. They're not deal breakers, but I do hope that Canon will fix them in the future. So the things that I like about this camera and that I think make it perfectly suited for anyone who is planning on using this for YouTube are obviously, first of all, the flip out screen. The flip out screen is a huge time saver, and it's just very convenient overall, preventing you from having to walk around the back of the camera to interact with it. Then you also add the fact that it is a touch screen and you basically don't even have to get up. I mean, I can literally just reach over here and tap the screen, focus on different areas, change the settings, and so on without having to get up at all or stumble over the cables I have laying around for these lights. It's pretty awesome. Now, another thing I really like about this camera, as someone who usually shoots on a camera without autofocus, is autofocus. Now, this again is a huge time saver, and it'll prevent you from having to do reshoots because you realize later on that your video was out of focus, so it's just very convenient overall. This camera also has built-in Wi-Fi and a corresponding app for iOS and Android, which lets you not only download videos and pictures directly off the camera, but also have a live view and be able to adjust the settings, start and stop recording, all from your phone or tablet, which is, it's awesome. Overall, this camera is pretty small and mind-blowingly light, which again makes it just that much more convenient for traveling or tossing in a bag or suitcase. And now the last thing I really like about this camera is the fact that you get a mic input port as well as a place on top of the camera to attach a microphone. But that's also where we start to run into the downsides of the camera, the things I don't like. So let's start with that mic input port. So having this port is great, but the position of it isn't exactly optimal. With the screen flipped open, you actually can't really get to that rubber cap which is protecting the ports, which means that you're gonna have to close the screen, open it just a little bit, flip the screen, then rotate it because you can't rotate it once it's already open. And then once you have the screen open, then you can put your finger in there and try to pry it open a little bit. And even once you've done that, if you do decide to plug in a microphone, it'll cover up the screen. So that's not very well thought out. Now the touchscreen is great, but there is definitely one feature that I think is really missing from this camera, and that is that when you're viewing videos you've already taken, you can't actually scroll through them. The camera has lots of playback features. You can skip to the last frame, you can go back to the first frame of the video, you can go to the next frame, you can play the video in slow motion and set how fast you want it to play, but you just can't skip ahead to whatever part of the video you want, which I think is something that you really need. And finally, the last thing I don't really like is the fact that this camera is not weatherproof. So if you're out and about shooting and it starts to rain, even a little bit, you're probably going to want to stay on the safe side and start wrapping things up and putting the camera away, as it can sustain damage from water. So that is all that I have to say about this camera, but the big question is still, should you buy it? And in my opinion, absolutely yes. This camera will get you about 95% of the features at just a fraction of the price of the cameras that the big YouTubers out there use. So in that regard, I think it's great. Does it have its flaws though? Yeah, of course. But in my opinion, that's something you can look past pretty easily, especially once you take the price of the camera into account. So in my opinion, it's not really that big of a deal. So there you have it, the Canon SL2 or 200D, depending on where you live. It's a great camera. In my opinion, you should definitely get it if you're looking to get into YouTube or have been using another camera for YouTube and want to step up your game a little bit, but without breaking the bank. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to click that like button down there, it helps out a bunch. Also, leave me a comment letting me know what you thought of this video and what you think of this camera. And if you think I've earned it, consider subscribing, as that would really mean a lot. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.